Liberty SiriusXM Group. Shares held, Class A Class C, 14,860,360 43,208,291. Holding value, Class A Class C, $492,918,000 $1,429,330,000. Percent of portfolio, total, 0.84%. Berkshire has managed to find a way to own SiriusXM in not one, not two, but three different ways. Liberty Media has for years held a large stake in SiriusXM Holdings. But in 2015, the company actually recapitalized, offering, among other things, several tracking stocks that allowed investors to enjoy in the performance of Liberty's SiriusXM investment directly rather than get it piecemeal through Liberty Media itself. Thus, Buffett was exposed to SiriusXM before it directly invested in Siri shares in Q4 2016. But over time, he has bought more of the tracking stock. The overall body of tracking stock currently represents Liberty's roughly 70% stake in SiriusXM. The Berkshire Hathaway portfolio now holds more than 58 million shares of Liberty SiriusXM Group Series A, currently at $42.70, and Liberty SiriusXM Group Series C, currently at $42.80, combined. While Buffett was busy tweaking his other Malone holdings, he left Siri and the tracking stock alone. Warren Buffett is the largest institutional shareholder in each class, holding 4.3% of Liberty SiriusXM's A shares, and 12.6% of the C shares. Visa. Shares held, 9,987,460. Holding value, $1,997,192,000. Percent of portfolio, 0.87%. Visa, currently at $212.70, operates the world's largest payments network, and thus is well positioned to benefit from the growth of cashless transactions and digital mobile payments. Like MasterCard, Visa was the idea of Lieutenants Todd Combs and Ted Weschler. Buffett won't tell. And like MasterCard, Buffett wishes Berkshire had bought more. Berkshire Hathaway first bought Visa in the third quarter of 2011, and it has proven to be a mammoth winner. Including dividends, Visa has delivered a whopping annualized return of 30.5% since September 30, 2011. It's also a dividend growth machine, ramping up its payout by 167% over the past 5 years alone. If I had been as smart as Ted or Todd, I would have bought Visa, Buffett told shareholders at the 2018 annual meeting. Visa accounts for a modest but not insignificant holding at 0.87% of Buffett's portfolio. Meanwhile, Berkshire's 0.5% stake in Visa doesn't even put it among the top 25 investors. General Motors. Shares held, 80 million. Holding value, $2,367,201,000. Percent of portfolio, 1.03%. Warren Buffett continues to add to one of his favorite American brands. Berkshire first took a stake in General Motors, currently at $42.13, the world's fourth largest auto manufacturer by production, in early 2012. And he must have seen something he liked. He has since upped his position during 2018, 2019, and yet again here during the third quarter of 2020. Buffett bought an additional 5.3 million shares in Q3, which brought his total to a cool 80 million shares on the dot. Berkshire Hathaway is now the fifth largest investor in General Motors at about 5.5% of all outstanding shares. And that bet is finally paying off, with General Motors shares now outperforming the market late in 2020. That's despite the fact GM suspended its dividend in late April. General Motors has always looked like a classic Buffett value bet. General Motors is an iconic American brand and a play on the long-term growth of the U.S. economy. Buffett also likes CEO Mary Barra, singing her praise on multiple occasions. "Mary is as strong as they come," Buffett said. "She is as good as I've seen." Bank of New York Mellon. Shares held, 72,357,453. Holding value, $2,484,755,000. Percent of portfolio, 1.09%. Berkshire Hathaway remains the largest investor at 8.2% of shares. Vanguard is number 2 at 7.3%. Warren Buffett has been a fan of Bank of New York Mellon, currently at $39.71, for some time, and seems to largely remain one. While it trimmed the position a little in Q2, it avoided the heavy-handed haircuts that Berkshire's other bank holdings suffered during the third quarter. Bank of New York Mellon is a custodian bank that holds assets for institutional clients and provides back-end accounting services. Its roots actually go all the way back to 1784, when Bank of New York was founded by a group including Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. Today, Bank of New York Mellon is the nation's 9th largest bank by assets, according to data from the Federal Reserve. Berkshire Hathaway first took a position in Bank of New York Mellon back during Q3 2010, when it paid an estimated average price of $43.90. Bank of New York Mellon wasn't completely spared the scythe during the second quarter, but Warren Buffett's 7.4 million share sale, at 9% of the stake, was less drastic than his other financial stock reductions. The Bank of New York Mellon stake was untouched in Q3. VeriSign. Shares held, 12,815,613. Holding value, $2,625,279,000. Percent of portfolio, 1.15%. Berkshire bought VeriSign, currently at $194.88, an internet infrastructure service company that quite literally keeps the world connected online and acts as a domain registry for the .com, .net and other top-level domains, during a dip in the final quarter of 2012. The company's dominance of the space exemplifies Buffett's love of deep moats, and the stake has paid off well. VeriSign hasn't done much this year, up just 1% to the S&P 500's 12%, but it has raced ahead 402% since the start of 2013, more than doubling the S&P 500's 199% total return. VeriSign also is a teachable example of how stocks aren't good or bad in a bubble. One investor's brilliant purchase often is, depending on timing, another investor's biggest failure. Stanley Druckenmiller, a famed former hedge fund manager, didn't have nearly as much luck with VeriSign. Druckenmiller made a $200 million short on tech stocks in early 1999 while investing for George Soros' Quantum Fund, but lost $600 million in the trade. He then tried to win it back via a big $6 billion buy-in of tech stocks including VeriSign, but he lost $3 billion in 6 weeks as VRSN and several other recent purchases flopped, making it one of the smart money's worst stock calls of all time. Berkshire Hathaway now owns almost 13 million shares in the company, making it the largest institutional investor in VeriSign at an 11.2% ownership stake. Wells Fargo. Shares held, 127,380,440. Holding value, $2,994,716,000. Percent of portfolio, 1.31%. Warren Buffett has just about had it with Wells Fargo, currently at $24.90. Wells Fargo, which has been in the Berkshire portfolio since 2001, has turned into a weight around Buffett's neck since 2016, when numerous scandals bubbled to the surface. The bank opened millions of phony accounts, modified mortgages without authorization and charged customers for auto insurance they did not need. The cleanup process has been slow, and it has claimed not one but two CEOs. Wells Fargo stock, meanwhile, has lagged its peers for quite some time. Buffett has sold off Wells Fargo shares in numerous quarters since the start of 2018. While most of the previous sales appeared to be routine paring on the position to keep it below a regulatory 10% maximum ownership threshold for banks, Buffett dumped more than 55 million shares, or nearly 15% of his position, at the end of last year. In Q2, he jettisoned 85.6 million shares, or more than a quarter of the remaining stake. In the third quarter, he cut the stake by another 46%. Amazingly, Berkshire Hathaway remains a top 5 investor despite tossing huge chunks of its position overboard. Buffett still maintains a 3.1% stake that puts it behind Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street and Dodge & Cox. Those 4 shareholders all added to their positions in Q3. Davida. Shares held, 36,095,570. Holding value, $3,091,586,000. Percent of portfolio, 1.35%. Davida serves patients via more than 3,000 dialysis centers in the US and 9 other countries. Aging baby boomers and a graying population in many developed markets should provide a strong, secular tailwind. Buffett once again trimmed its position in Davida, currently at $113.14, which was unchanged for years until recently. Berkshire snipped 1% of its stake in the kidney care provider and dialysis center operator earlier in 2020. Then it cut another 5% in Q3. Berkshire disclosed its initial position in Davida during 2012's first quarter. Given that Davida was a large position of Ted Weschler's Peninsula Capital in his pre-Berkshire days, it wasn't unreasonable to assume that it was his pick. Weschler confirmed as much in 2014. Davida's shares have underperformed the S&P 500 by about 7 percentage points since Q1 2012, so it's not terribly surprising that Berkshire is slowly unwinding its stake. Even then, Buffett remains Davida's largest shareholder by a country mile. Its stake of 36.1 million shares represents almost 30% of the company's shares outstanding.